I think we're live. So welcome everybody to this Hangout on Air. Last October, we spoke with Jacopo and Stelio from Cocoon Projects about their unique organization, which we have defined as a liquid organization. And I must say one of my favorite quotes from that was the way you defined liquid organization, which was, like water, our physical properties naturally adapt to wherever we go. So we're now back 6 months later, and we want to find out what's new, what happened in this last 6 months, and what have you learned. So I'm also joined by Vasco from Happy Melly, and we're going to be quizzing you for the next 20 to 30 minutes about all the different things that have happened and what you've learned. For people that want to ask questions in the audience, you can send a tweet to Happy Melly Hangout, or you can ask it through the chat panel or the Q&A on the Google Plus account. So no excuses for not asking questions. Bring them on. Vasco, I think I'll turn it over to you if you want to start with the first question.
Yeah, the first question is, we talked about liquid organizations and your project and your journey through the organizational design maze that you started some years ago in October. But I know that you guys have developed a lot more ideas and are even planning on new things in the near future. So let's first start with what you've learned since last October. What are the new things, the experiments that have failed perhaps or have succeeded, and why, and what you've learned from those?
Stelio,
so
you go.
Okay, so it's a difficult question because actually the most important thing is that we are learning a lot. Our point of view is shifting over and over, so we're iterating on a weekly basis on that. But I would say that the most important things that we have learned are related to the fact that this model enables people to be in the center. And that, of course, has some downsides. So the most, in terms of difficulties, but also in terms of opportunities, of course, the two main topics that I see are effective communication, so all the information and knowledge flow within such an organization that doesn't have pre-designed lines to follow, and when you scale up, you need something that works effectively in order to have this organism sharing the right information within the right people or with everybody, which that might become pretty noisy. And on the other side, of course, closely connected with the topic of leadership. There is a completely different kind of leadership within such an organization. It's on one side, it's not a pre-designed leader. You don't have somebody in charge for, I don't know, marketing. So if we need marketing, people need to start moving because nobody will tell them, oh, you have to do this. So, and on the other side, it's also a more operational leadership. So it's a leadership that has two qualities. One is not focus on politics, on discussion, but focus on things that get done. And on the other side, not a focus on ego, which is even more difficult. But leaders in such an organization need to be what is called network leaders. So to be, first of all, enabling other people or other things to happen, in which they can, of course, be a fit or even be a leader, but they can't do things for their own convenience at all. And that's an old way of thinking that we keep somehow connecting with leaders. So I will cut it short to have also Jacopo's point of view on this.
Well, going a little bit more into details, I think during the last 7 months, the hardest lessons were on the communication side. We are struggling with looking for and finding some way to share the right information with the right people at the right moment. And so far, we are in a constant trade-off between quickness and completeness. And well, experiments just started. We are deploying a new communication framework the most physical sense. It's something. So it's not just a platform, but it's a complex of a platform and some policies on top, so that we are able to share, well, as I said, to share the right information at the right time, but also to let people know who holds the right information at any given time, so that I know whom to ask for the right information. And this is I think the worst bottleneck, as you may imagine, with a non-structured, so a company like this is a company where information flows with no predefined structure, so it can be very quick, but it can be lost. It's like internet protocols. You don't have a defined route, and sometimes if you don't provide with a nice protocol, with a robust protocol, you may lose information.
So you guys are telling us things that are extremely important in all organizations. It has nothing to do with liquid organizations. We hear the same things all over the world. So can you be a little bit more concrete? And there are two areas that are very interesting for me. So one of them is the communication aspect that both Stelio and Jacopo were just talking about. Let's start there. Can you tell us a concrete story, something that actually happened, not the aerial, not the 10,000 feet view, but something that actually you went through, you felt the pain in your skin when you were going through that situation? Can you take us to that moment and explain to us with a story how that realization that you needed to change the way communication happened in the company, how did that come to you?
Okay. For example, I recently joined a group working on task. Later on, not at the very start, I missed the kickstarting meeting of the task, and I missed a few details that were sort of backfiring on me at the end. So weeks later on, when everybody assumed that I was able to retrieve information that was shared among the rest of the team, but there was no meta knowledge about the knowledge. I didn't know what I was not knowing, So instead of having a predefined reference in a standard company, who's the boss in charge for holding the keys and for watching the gate for such an information. Instead, I had no upfront training about what was needed to complete that task on my side. And I had to discover all by myself the private customs of the group. Every group self-organizes in our company, and this provides for very efficient and effective performance. But when the group closely shares the same communication rules, and if we want to scale up and out, we have to cope with some way to quickly enable people to know. It's quite involute as a speech, but
okay, but
it's a very
now we're getting a bit too much into the aerials again. I wanted to go back to something more concrete. So we understood you joined the group, and there was something important you needed to know, but you didn't know. So you had to figure out how to find out that information. So, but before we go to the details, tell us. Tell us what have you thought about the platform that you are creating that will solve that? Because I imagine that you are not the only one, especially because you allow self-organization to an extreme. I imagine that you are not the only one that has faced that problem in your company.
No.
What is the platform that you are trying to build, and what characteristics does that platform bring to the communication process that will avoid that problem in the future?
Okay, I will be quick and then leave the word to Stelio. I don't want to steal too much of the scene. We are trying to use some social networked platform. You know, it's something like Facebook, though it's not Facebook, that will allow us to have concentrical and pods, so that we can create groups that we can, and in which we can share statuses, Twitter-like statuses, and multimedia files the way Google Plus and Facebook do, so that we can create around a goal a sort of conversation district that we can join to know what happened in the past, to check the files, the documents that are important for that single action. And once the action is over, once the task is completed, we can dismantle that group with no overhead, without overburdening the people. You know, we benchmarked a few ways during April and May, and we decided that after experimenting, Facebook-like communication was a very nice way to get and keep in touch while working together. I don't know whether Stelio wants to add something.
Yeah, just two little things. One is that this is true not just at a very tactical level, but also at a strategical level, because in such a system, if you don't have enough information to understand what is really important for the group, for the company to do first, so like we are in the process of validating something on the market, then you will think that other things are more urgent, but not because you think differently than anybody else, but just because you don't have the information of what's going on. That can be, I don't know, economic information, that could be information about partners and opportunities. And the second thing is that doing this first setup Jacopo was talking about, of this tool, we're using a communication tool, it's a communication framework. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. I don't know if there are different, I don't want to make names here, but we chose one. We've been enlisting the type of contents we need to somehow organize in this first setup. And it's coming out that there are a lot of different communication type of contents that we were missing and just relying on oral tradition. Like, for example, I've just noted a few while Jacopo was talking, policies. Who has the keys for some tool or for some, I don't know, website or whatever? Decisions. What are the previous decisions, how they have been made? This is important if you enter the system. You need to have a place to look for that. Resources. It's so common that on WhatsApp, I can name that, it's so famous. We share some articles, some new tool, okay, but then it's lost. If you enter in 1 month from that moment, you don't have that information. Maybe it was an important information. And also, to close it, also opportunities, which means a lot of things. If you know there is an opportunity, you can tell that you have a similar one, or that you have something to use that opportunity. All this kind of very different information need to flow. We don't want to batch in information. We don't want to do what we are telling our customer not to do in other domains. Information is just the same. We don't want to put a lot of information on one shelf and then you can go and look for that. We want to, as much as possible, to have a continuous information flow, and I believe this is not a problem for a single liquid organization, but this is a problem for enormous liquid communities all over the world. It's a problem we all experience.
So one thing that comes to my mind, and this is something that has been discussed over and over and over again, which is this information overload. And I hear you guys talk about generating more information, collecting more information, making more information available. but I don't. How are you planning to even filter this? Because the information is relevant only at a specific point in time, like WhatsApp, like you mentioned, or it is relevant because a lot of people are talking about it, therefore it is relevant for them, so it must be relevant for you. Maybe it is relevant because it has to do with the decision that is coming up, but it's not yet there, so how do we know that the decision is coming up? Like, how are you planning to filter all of this?
Well, our bet so far is that tagging users of the platform, so tagging people, hashtagging contents, and having repositories for permanent content will be enough. This is our current bet. As I told you, we are starting a sort of second round of experimenting with a platform that closely resembles Facebook.
And on top of this, I would say that maybe I would switch the words in question. We're not trying to make more information available, but we're trying to make information more available. So the thing is that if you somehow need an information because you enter a group, because you have a skill or something that you can tag, the system, or the core system means, must allow you to reach it. It doesn't. It's a pull. It must be a pull system, not pushing information on you. It's allowing you first to access the right information and then to attract the right information.
So this is actually a very interesting conversation that I would like to come back to this once you guys have concrete stories and results to share. I recently read a book by Clay Shirky called Here Comes Everybody, which I definitely recommend for people interested in networked organizations and how communication or valuable information flows in networks. And he has a lot of ideas of how to determine, for example, centrality of information, how to optimize information flows, and so on, based on the concept that we are all in a network. And his main idea was publish, then filter. So the idea that the filters are the important part, that publication of information should be very low barrier, but then we need to invest in the filters so that, of course, we get the right information to surface, as well as we don't get information overload. And we see this happening all the time. Facebook most famously did recently an experiment about this by creating a psychological experiment about the filtering process of Facebook, like how the news on Facebook are presented to you, the items that are on your stream. There's lots of algorithms behind. It's not just the latest one. Like on Twitter, you would get the latest one gets published at the top of the stream. So it's going to be very interesting to see what you guys come up with and what are the experiments that you've run and what you've learned from those in a few months. But the other aspect I would like to tackle, which is an aspect that is actually extremely important in the Agile community, is the scaling aspect. What have you guys learned about scaling? Not just communication, I'm assuming, but also other things. And what can you share with our viewers?
Well, my answer so far is very simple, and maybe it could sound like I'm trying to avoid answering, but it's just reality. We didn't scale up yet, so we don't have concrete experience. My answer about this would be wishful thinking anyway. So I have no empirical reference to show you. So I would just postpone this answer to our next hangout, maybe in the next months.
Just to give some numbers, I think we were 30 people when we talked last time, around 30 people. We're 45 now. So there's people joining, but we have not yet opened up to people we don't meet in person. That's on purpose. We are focusing on validating our business model, for example, before scaling up. But that makes what Jacopo said really the only possible answer.
Don't forget, Vasco and Lisette, that we are not working on the governance model as our value proposition. Our governance model is something we are talking a lot about in your Hangouts and in other places, events around Europe, and well, or even on the other side of the pond. We will be in New York in November. But you know, open governance, spreading the open governance model is not the mission of the company. So we are just trying to make the, you know, the company has to grow business-wise, not model-wise. So we are adapting our model to our business needs and not vice versa. Well, I forgot the second point, but the first one was enough.
I have a question related to this, which is, oh, sorry, Stelio, go ahead.
No. Please go ahead. I will tell it later.
The question that I have is, the last time we spoke, you guys talked about your unique interviewing process, which really struck a chord with me and is something that I've been talking about in presentations that I've been giving. And that interview process, just for people who aren't aware, is that you stopped using the standard recruitment process with interviews, and that anybody that wanted to work could join with using your open governance tasks that were available. So I'm curious, how has that been going, and is it working?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the most important things in the last months are that a lot of contributors are starting to act with leadership, are doing things without anybody telling them. And there's people, I have one here sitting on my side that has just entered the company, a matter of days or weeks, with just sending a presentation email. I mean, and that's it for us. And you start doing things and see if you fit in.
And it's working, apparently.
Absolutely.
I would say very well.
Absolutely. Many. So well, you know, other 15 people join us since our last hangout, and most of them are very valuable people you are happy to be in touch with. So, and on the other side, the same process, the same contribution model lets people fade out if they don't have self-resources or cultural matching enough to cooperate in some way that brings real value in. And they just, so far, a few people just have been fading out gracefully with no conflicts, you know? You just stop cooperating on tasks.
Fading.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's something we learned from that side that, I don't know, might be of some interest. We found there is some kind of bell curve of contribution energy, and you can't resist in the middle of it. So either you are on a really assiduous contribution, you are present to a lot of our rituals and do things, so you have information, you are enabled to create value, or you just show up occasionally, like once in a month, to see what's going on and maybe add some opportunity. In the middle, nobody is resisting. I actually don't know why. I would guess that it's related with information processing, probably. But the thing is, you have a too high opportunity cost. So people tend to be on one side or the other.
Yeah, there are people only attending the Jam, the Cocoon Projects Jam. It's a big event we hold every 6 months, and some contributors just join the Jam just to keep in touch, to keep themselves in touch with a half-year strategy, and then so far some of them they didn't cooperate on the operational side. So it's a very free model on this.
It's interesting that you mentioned the bell curve, because actually my experience has been that in projects I see in practice the contribution follows more of a power curve, which means that there's very few people who contribute a lot, and then there's lots of people who only contribute a little bit, you know, more or less, depending on perhaps even their tasks or skills. But so you're saying that you don't see that You don't see that aspect or that dynamic in your own experience.
No. Actually, I didn't explain it. I agree with you. That's exactly what we experienced. What I was trying to visualize with the bell curve was the energy, the efforts needed. So I was saying that there are some points, if you imagine on the x-axis, the frequency of attending our things or doing things with us, and then it's there in the origin, you make the bell curve start. When you attend really a few things, you have low energy. You can stay there. If you attend a lot of things, again, you have low energy. If you are stuck in the middle, you don't resist there. You're not able to create value. You just waste a lot of energy. You move on one side or the other. That's what I was trying to say. But
Okay.
yes, there is a lot of people contributing with few things, and few people contributing a lot. That's true.
So that must be a challenge for leadership in particular projects. I mean, after all, as Jacopo said, you exist because you are a business. Either you make money or you go out of business and you stop to exist. So I'm sure it must be quite a big challenge to actually manage that level of contribution and that level of energy. What have you guys learned about that, about how to manage voluntary contributors in projects to keep the energy level at the right level?
Well, on this side, we have to, a common misconception about our model is to confuse the customer projects with the governance model. While the governance model we used to talk about is about how we make the company go on, so it's the management layers, it's a non-management layer actually. The customer projects are run in a different way. So we can organize team with people not joining the open governance model. We can organize working teams with consultants from the outside of the company, with professionals that come from somewhere else. So we generate revenue with pods. I like to call them pods, like Dave Gray calls them in the Connected Company. So we have sort of every project has its own cell dedicated to the outcome of the project. So it doesn't, the contribution and membership model doesn't relate to how we generate revenues actually.
That still didn't answer my question. My question is, if you have observed that there are two levels of participation that are low energy, that either don't generate or remove energy from people's contributions, this is, no matter what is the revenue model, this is a challenge for leadership, whether it is within the open governance model or your customer engagement. So how do you deal with that? What can you share with our viewers about what you have learned that helps you to manage to keep the energy level at the right, or the involvement level at the right level, in order to keep the engagement, the energy level high?
Well, I don't think leadership has something to do with the generation of commitment in people. It can be about keeping people connected enough to generate value according to their motivation. But I don't want to just reply in some obvious way.
So what do you do? You just accept and you tell people that are losing energy in terms of their contribution, as Telly was referring to?
I let them discover by themselves. If they are spending too much comparing in trade-off with the value they're feeling they're generating, or they're measuring they're generating, depending on the individual approach, they discover themselves. They decide to fade out. We don't push them to fade out.
So what you're saying is that this still has a lot to do with your open governance model then. If the way you manage those projects is to help people discover whether they have energy to contribute or not, and then lead them or help them to make the concrete decisions based on that. So I'm confused, because Telly told us that
yeah, he was talking about open governance. My answer to you about customer projects was wrong. I misunderstood your question. You were focusing on open governance, And according to what Stelio said, open governance actually is made of people who just stick enough to just to be in touch, to be updated, and people who are very committed and get a rewarding experience out of open governance. At least, if Stelio meant this way.
Definitely.
Can we hear from Stelio?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. As for the customer project, I won't add a thing because Iago was all about it. In open governance, both people that have will and time and energy to contribute frequently, and also people that do that occasionally, show some kind of leadership. And I actually, yes, I agree, and I observe that leadership has to do operational and network leadership, the one I was talking about, definitely has to do with engagement and availability of information in the sense we talked about. A powerful tool that we have for that, and I will make a real concrete example, is what we call open workgroups. On some teams, anybody can claim to open, it's like a community of practice, an open workgroup. For example, and if you have somebody else joining, if you have two people at least, the open workgroup officially exists. Okay, if you are alone, that's not a group. So anybody can do that. And we have one for the critical activities on the customer side, which are for us are coaching, team leading, and accounting. Okay. So now we are in a moment in which we are starting to validate some processes we have with customers before being ready to scale up. And this was happening just with a few of us that had all the information from the beginning. So what we did is within that group, we proposed an activity that we called Accounting Bootcamp. And it was, again, voluntary, so anybody could join that activity. And on another side, anybody could have proposed that activity, which happened in other example I can give you. So we had this bootcamp. In this bootcamp, there was 1/3 of the whole number of people in Cocoon Projects. Some people traveled to reach that bootcamp, which meant a validation of the good idea, at least, of doing that. So people felt the need for having more information in order to activate their actions in that scope. So in order to be able to lead something, they need to be informed and engaged in what has been and what is being carried on. And I believe that, again, we don't want to push anything, so open workgroups are a nice pull mechanism for that kind of leadership. The other part of our model that helps that are our rituals. So being with us for 1 hour on Skype for our coordination meeting each week. Being with us for 3 or 4 hours with our monthly catch-up. And then the quarterly meetings and the twice a year jams where we live together for 3 days and we have open spaces about everything that is important. I don't know if I'm answering, but I think these are the tools that are working pretty well to enable people to lead in such a destructured context.
Okay, hey, this has been a very inspiring conversation in many aspects. I think that we would need to dig a lot more into what those rituals are and how you came up with them, but I think that we'll have to do for another podcast. I just wanted to highlight some very interesting topics that might be useful for us to talk about in the future. One of them is the experiment you're about to run with the communication social platform or network platform for communication. And also, I would be very much interested in what you learn about scaling up your efforts. This is a very hot topic also currently in the Agile community, and a lot of people are interested to hear about concrete examples when we apply scaling concepts to live and to live projects, and of course myself as well. So thank you very much for this inspiring conversation. Lisette, do you want to take it next?
Yes, but actually, Stelio has a question or a comment.
I can say what I dropped before is on the first point that Vasco mentioned. Just to remind that we are building our governance platform. We've started it. We will release it as open source and host it also as an instance. And what we will try to do is to make some native connection between the communication tools and the open governance platform. That could be interesting on that side. And in the meanwhile, we have released our liquid organization model, if anybody is interested, on the website liquidorganization.info. It's a white paper on Creative Commons, just so if anybody wants to know what we've done so far, we will try to keep that up to date.
Great. So yes, one more time, it's liquidorganization.info, and if you want to learn more about Cocoon Projects, it's cocoonprojects.com. So thanks everybody for joining us. You're always welcome to ask questions at #HappyMellyHangout. And until then, love and keep up the good work.
Ciao.
Bye, thank you.
Ciao, ciao.